Have you ever noticed a guy who seems almost too perfect for modern dating? The one sipping matcha at the coffee shop, reading feminist literature with theatrical concentration, wearing painted nails and enough rings to stock a jewelry store. The performative male has this attachment style, and once you understand what drives this carefully crafted persona, you'll never look at these performative males the same way again. What you're about to discover will reveal the hidden psychology behind one of dating's most confusing trends, and why recognizing this pattern could save you from months of emotional confusion. Tonight, we're pulling back the curtain on a phenomenon that's become increasingly common in modern dating culture, the performative male epidemic. You'll learn exactly what attachment style drives this behavior, why it's so effective at fooling people, and most importantly, how to spot the difference between genuine authenticity and calculated performance. Because understanding the why behind someone's carefully curated image is the key to protecting your heart from manipulation disguised as sensitivity. Let's start with what you're actually looking at when you encounter a performative male. These are guys who have essentially created a character designed to appeal to women who value progressive ideals and emotional intelligence. Picture this: wide baggy jeans paired with a baby tee that shows just enough midriff to signal comfort with femininity. A beanie rolled up almost to the crown of their head, creating that carefully disheveled look that suggests artistic depth. Wired headphones playing Clairo or Laufey, artists whose gentle, dreamy sound perfectly matches the aesthetic they're cultivating. But here's where things get interesting from an evolutionary perspective. You see, nature has countless examples of smaller, weaker males who can't compete directly with dominant males for mates. Instead, they develop what scientists call alternative mating strategies. In the animal kingdom, this includes everything from elaborate courtship dances to actual physical disguises. Some male fish literally dress up as females to sneak past larger, more aggressive males and access potential female mates. Humans aren't exempt from these patterns. When traditional masculine traits like physical dominance, financial success, or social status aren't available, some men unconsciously adopt what researchers Richard Dawkins and John Krebs termed sneaky strategies. The performative male represents a modern version of this ancient pattern, using camouflage and misdirection to gain access to women who might otherwise be wary of male attention. Think about the specific choices these men make. Everything is carefully curated for maximum approachability. The tote bag signals environmental consciousness and rejection of toxic masculinity. The feminist literature displayed prominently in public spaces broadcasts moral alignment with women's values. The painted nails and jewelry suggest comfort with gender fluidity and artistic expression. Each element sends a specific message. This person is safe, evolved, and different from other men. But here's what makes this pattern particularly revealing. It's not just about individual choices. It's about the systematic adoption of an entire aesthetic package. When someone suddenly develops passionate interests in multiple traditionally feminine activities simultaneously, we're witnessing calculated impression management rather than organic personal evolution. The psychology behind this behavior becomes clearer when you understand the concept of moral grandstanding. This occurs when people publicly display certain values not primarily because of genuine conviction, but because of the social benefits those displays provide. The performative male isn't necessarily reading feminist theory because it genuinely resonates with his worldview. He's reading it because being seen reading it positions him as an ally and potential romantic partner. Consider how intentionally visible these behaviors are. The book reading happens in coffee shops and on public transportation where maximum people can witness the performance. The aesthetic choices are bold enough to be noticed and commented upon. Even the music choice, listened to through conspicuous wired headphones, becomes part of the display. This level of visibility suggests the behavior is designed for an audience rather than personal satisfaction. What drives someone to adopt such an elaborate persona? The answer lies in attachment theory, specifically the anxious attachment style. These men are operating from a deep fear of rejection and abandonment, leading them to engage in what psychologists call hyperactivation strategies. They become vigilant about impression management, constantly seeking approval and acceptance from potential romantic partners. The anxious attachment system drives them to present themselves as the opposite of what they perceive women fear in men. If traditional masculinity feels threatening to modern women, they'll adopt an aggressively non-masculine presentation. If emotional availability is valued, they'll perform emotional intelligence even when it doesn't come naturally. If feminist values are important to their target demographic, they'll adopt the external markers of those values. This explains why the performative male aesthetic feels so calculated, because it essentially is. It's not the natural expression of someone's authentic interests and values. It's a strategic response to perceived market demands in the dating world. Like Joe Goldberg from You Netflix series, who carefully studies and mirrors the interests of women he wants to attract, the performative male has studied what appeals to progressive women and created a persona designed to trigger their interest and trust. The tragedy of this pattern is that it often works, at least initially. Women who value emotional intelligence and progressive values are naturally drawn to men who seem to embody those qualities. The performative male's carefully crafted image hits all the right notes: sensitivity, creativity, moral consciousness, and rejection of traditional masculine toxicity. But relationships built on performance rather than authenticity are destined to fail once the real person emerges from behind the costume. The anxious attachment that drives the initial performance also creates the very behaviors that ultimately sabotage the connection. The constant need for validation becomes exhausting. The fear of being discovered as less evolved than advertised creates defensive behaviors. The energy required to maintain the persona eventually becomes unsustainable. What makes this particularly confusing for women is that the performative male often genuinely believes in his own performance. He's not consciously trying to deceive anyone. He's unconsciously trying to become someone he thinks will be lovable. The painted nails and feminist literature aren't just props in a manipulation scheme. They're desperate attempts to transform himself into someone worthy of love and acceptance. This is why the performative male represents such a complex challenge in modern dating. Unlike obvious manipulation or clearly toxic behavior, this pattern exists in the gray area between authentic growth and calculated deception. The person engaging in it often has good intentions, even as they're unconsciously manipulating their presentation to achieve romantic success. Understanding this pattern matters because it reveals something important about how anxious attachment manifests in modern dating culture. Instead of directly expressing their fear of rejection, these men attempt to eliminate the possibility of rejection by becoming irresistible to their target demographic. They're trying to hack the dating system by presenting themselves as the perfect progressive male, not realizing that authenticity is ultimately more attractive than performance. The key to recognizing performative behavior lies in paying attention to consistency and spontaneity. Genuine interests and values are expressed naturally and consistently across different contexts. They don't require an audience to be maintained, and they develop gradually over time rather than appearing fully formed as a complete aesthetic package. When someone's entire personality seems perfectly calibrated to appeal to a specific demographic, you're likely witnessing performance rather than authenticity. Real people have contradictions, unexpected interests, and areas where they're still growing. The performative male's persona is too perfect, too consistent, and too obviously designed to trigger specific responses. The solution isn't to become cynical about men who genuinely embrace progressive values or non-traditional masculine expression. Instead, it's about developing the ability to distinguish between authentic evolution and calculated performance. Look for consistency between public and private behavior, genuine curiosity rather than performative knowledge, and the willingness to be imperfect rather than maintaining a flawless, progressive image. And if a potential partner doesn't fit the flawless image you created in your head, don't worry, that just means they are authentically human. Remember that everyone deserves authentic connection, including men trapped in performative patterns driven by anxious attachment. The goal isn't to shame or reject these individuals, but to encourage genuine self-development rather than strategic self-presentation. Because ultimately, relationships built on truth are the only ones that can withstand the test of time and genuine intimacy.
Thank you for watching. If you want to learn how to better understand avoidance, relationships, and psychological biases, then subscribe to our channel, because you deserve beautiful relationships.